Welcome. This is a lovely group of people. We're so happy that all of you chose to come here tonight. My name is Sandra Herndon. I'm president of the League of Women Voters, and I've got some introductory material for you before we get to the meat and potatoes, as they say. First, I want to acknowledge that we are on native lands, lest we forget. And we are here by the sufferance of good people. Also call your attention to that you probably already know that there is a vigil going on at the Capitol, which was scheduled, to my knowledge, after we scheduled ours. But I won't remind them of that. It's very hard to get a good evening in the summer when everybody is available. So thank you for coming. I want to introduce first my co-moderator, Carol Goss, who she and I will be sharing these duties here, so we'll be popping up and back and forth. I also want to introduce Dusty Demarest from the Olympian, who you probably know, if not by sight, certainly by name, and we are co-sponsoring with the Olympian, and I assume you may have seen the notices in the newspaper, for which we're very appreciative. I also want to thank Thurston Community Media. Not only does Thurston Community Media provide us the opportunity for a televised forum, which we did on September 29, and it's now posted on YouTube and it's on Comcast Channel 77, which included these characters in a different guise. We're not repeating. This is not going to be a rerun here. But the people here that I'm pretty sure here, Bob is here, Aaron, Irene, I think, is his name Kerr? Is his name Kerr, who does the graphics? I don't know, is he here? And Dan Bennett sort of shepherded a lot of this stuff. Andrea Capere is out of town, but she left instructions. Did I miss anybody? We really appreciate Thurston Community Media, and they do really good work. And last but not least, of course, the candidates, who will get introduced in due time. I want to say, you know, when you're president of an organization like this and we have these meetings, I get to do what I call do the blessing. And so I need to tell you a little something about the League of Women Voters for those who might live someplace and never have heard of us. We are nonpartisan. That is to say, we do not support parties or candidates. So that means that we are impartial as an organization. You may see an individual league member supporting this person or that person. That's all fine. That's their business on their own time. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose candidates or parties. Our founding purpose was to promote the right to vote, as you can well imagine, given the name of the organization, and to inform voters. Hence, we conduct candidate forums in a variety of ways. I indicated that we have done the televised candidate forums already, which included city council primary candidates for Lacey, 2 positions in Olympia and in Yelm, as well as a different set of questions for the mayor. We also do voter registration. You'll see us out and about, different tables and so forth. There's a National Voter Registration Day coming up, which is not a league event per se, but we participate in it. And so if you see people registering to vote, if you need to change your address, if you have changed your name, if you're unclear about whether or not you are duly registered, you can do all of those kinds of things. We even not uncommonly we'll get a person who says, I can't vote, and upon questioning, they're a felon. But lo and behold, they can vote and may not know it. So we're very committed to getting that information out. We also do a lot of work on getting out the vote. It is really a crime when the turnout for an election is low, if even under 50%, which is just unacceptable. The League also studies issues and advocates after thorough investigation and consensus. For example, we've been doing a water study update. How many of you in here have attended any of the 5 forums? Aha, good, very good. And we'll have another array of programs, including 1 or more on the water issue during this next year. Okay, I think that's all of my housekeeping business, and Carol is going to tell us how the mechanics of this event work.
Thank you, Sandra. Before we get started, I do want to walk through what the process is going to be. So as Sandra mentioned, each candidate will be getting a question. They will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then each of the other 3 candidates each have 1 minute to also respond. Before we start asking questions, though, each candidate does have 2 minutes for opening statements, and when we're through asking the questions, they also have another 2 minutes for closing statements. But before I introduce the candidates, I also want to introduce our timekeepers for this evening. And we have Rhonda Parker over here. Porter. Rhonda Porter, sorry. Tony Wilson and Shelley Farrer. So we have that. And I also just wanted to jump in and mention that we do have voter registration tables set up right back here. And we also have our membership table set right back there. And if you need water, it's over there behind Karen Fraser there in the front row. All right, so let's get started. So I'll introduce the candidates. So we have Nathaniel Jones. I'm sorry, I just blanked out on your name. Ross.
David
Ross, thank you. And we have Brendan Clerget, and we have Cheryl Selby. All right. So Nathaniel, do you want to start with your opening statement?
I'd be happy to, yeah. Great, thank you very much. So my name is Nathaniel Jones. I've spent 2 terms on City Council, and I've spent 7 years as the Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Olympia. And I'll tell you the reason I'm running is because I think that Olympia deserves change. I think we need new direction. You know, Olympians are really proud of our hometown. There's a reason for that. We live in a very exceptional place with exceptional people, and I believe that we have a very bright future ahead of us. But we're also aware that our community is facing significant challenges. Housing costs are soaring, homelessness is growing, and the climate crisis is worsening. You know, Olympians provided strong support for the Home Fund back in February of last year. And the elections have shown that Olympians have elected candidates who ran to address homelessness. But the community wants this problem solved. And I'm proud to have authored a resolution that set new direction in our homeless response for Olympia. But the truth is that a bunch of tents downtown and some tiny homes really aren't showing the kind of return that I think our community is looking for. We need results that show that our investments are actually working. I'm proud to have worked with county commissioners to begin the process of a regional response. And I believe that Olympians want to help people who are ready to step forward and address their concerns and their problems, the things that have landed them in homelessness. We want a downtown that is more welcoming and more pleasant, and we need leadership that can bridge divides. So I want to be that person. I want to make those connections and bridge those divides and provide the leadership that Olympia is looking for. I believe I have the experience to do that. Thank you very much.
All right, David Ross.
Can you see me? You want me to stand? My name is David Ross. I'm running for office because I know it's time to stop abandoning our downtown, giving Olympia over to lawlessness, chaos, and addiction. I want to save our city and those who need our help the most. I want to see our downtown thrive for everyone and become the heart and soul of our community, as well as a wonderful center for diverse and affordable housing. I look forward to building bridges in the community, listening to our citizens, and motivating people to get involved with local issues. Shelter, housing, services, and treatment are needed, and we need a clean, safe, welcoming city. There's an affordable housing crisis, and people should feel safe to walk the trails, parks, and sidewalks of our community. There's a mental health crisis, and kids, women, and senior citizens should be completely comfortable enjoying our downtown. There's an opioid epidemic, and we deserve to have a community free of toxic medical waste and dirty needles strewn about our community. I spent 10 years serving this population. 5 of those years were as Thurston County's homeless outreach case manager. This was not ivory tower philosophical debate on policy or proper use of acronyms. It was hands-on, driving people with lice in my car to help win a VA or Social Security disability claim, or to get a haircut, or to get into treatment, or get ID by going to 4 different offices, or to beg a landlord to get a shot at housing. By the time you have someone like me, let alone a majority of progressive, liberal, democratic Olympians calling for change, you can pretty much bet things have gone off the rails. I'm not a politician. I'm a dad. I'm a lifetime Olympia resident. I'm a small business owner. 6 months ago, I had a young man that I met who was homeless and headed down 200 yards behind my business, overdose and die from a mixture of meth, heroin, and fentanyl the week after I met him. 6 months before that, I had a man murdered 200 yards from my building over drug money under the overpass. I'm calling for change, and I'd like to be that change.
Thank you. Brendan?
Wow, what a crowd tonight. This is fantastic. Thank you all for coming out, first of all. My name is Brendan Clerget. I'm 31 years young, and I am running for mayor because I want to see our youth get more involved in the change that our community desperately needs. I am not a politician. By trade, I'm a business analyst. My job is to go into organizations and businesses, find inefficiencies, and make them more effective and profitable, whether it's a nonprofit or it's a for-profit business. I believe that skill set carries over very well to politics. Right now in our city, we see serious inefficiencies, serious fiscal irresponsibility, and multiple problems that need new, fresh solutions. I want to be the person that can bring those solutions to the forefront. There's 3 main problems that I plan to fix when I get into office. The first one, obviously, is homelessness, something that we've all encountered and had a chance to see firsthand. Secondarily, affordable housing is next on the docket. Without finding ways to stimulate development in the city and protect our existing neighborhoods and not affect zoning changes, we're not going to see housing prices or rent prices drop. We have a serious supply-demand imbalance, and that needs to be handled. Third of all is public safety. Since we've had the homelessness problem, thefts, assaults, and robberies are at all-time highs per 100,000 in Olympia. That's completely unacceptable. When I was growing up, this city was a safe, beautiful place which I want to raise my family in. If we don't find a way to affect change soon, I don't know if ethically I can do that. For the rest of the evening, I plan to stay completely off book and talk to you genuinely and authentically, something I think that our city government has been missing for the last 4 years. I'm pushing for more accountability and transparency, and I want to hear from you after tonight. I want you to come up to me and talk to me and tell me anything that we don't cover so that I get a chance to make sure everyone's heard. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Cheryl Selby? After you wrestle with the microphone.
Yes, I should practice that first. Hi, I'm Olympia Mayor Cheryl Selby, and I'm excited to run for re-election because I'm proud to be an Olympian, and my heart and soul are in this city. One of the reasons that energizes me to run again is that I bring a unique perspective to all of my decision making. I'm the only council member and candidate that has owned a retail business downtown and has served on the Olympia Downtown Alliance and the Parking Business Improvement Area boards. My additional experience includes decades of volunteer work in the Olympia School District and service on multiple nonprofit boards that relate to affordable housing, the local arts, child care and child development, and the economy. I'm also the only a candidate that has worked for the city that I now serve as an elected official. In fact, when I first moved here, this was the first building I worked in. All told, I've dedicated a quarter century to enhancing the wonderful appeal our town holds for visitors while upholding the balance of livability for our residents. And my campaign is off to an amazing start. I'm honored to have the support of a vast array of bipartisan elected officials, including every current mayor in Thurston County, many former electeds, the Olympia firefighters, numerous trade unions, and many of your friends and neighbors. I've also received more individual contributions than any other candidate in my race, and my supporters have knocked on thousands of doors with me. Yes, we have major challenges facing our city, which I look forward to discussing with you tonight, but I believe that my powerful blend of public, private, nonprofit, and now elected experience gives me the tools necessary to solve these issues in a collaborative and strategic manner. You can visit my website, electcherylselby.com, for a thorough list of my policy statements and a list of my endorsers, and I'd appreciate your support in my re-election campaign in the August 6th primary. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question will go to Nathaniel Jones. Can everyone hear me? Yep, all right. The City of Olympia is currently allowing construction of several large residential buildings and the reconstruction of the 9-story building on the Isthmus, all in areas predicted to flood from sea level rise before the end of the century. What is your view about city policies? Continue to allow this kind of construction? Modify the policies to address any future flooding? And if modify, what would be your recommendations?
That's a great question. Thank you. And I think many in the audience know that Olympia has joined with the Lot Clean Water Alliance and with the Port of Olympia to produce our first sea level rise plan, our first study that actually lays out a direction for how to deal with flooding in downtown. We know that flooding is on its way. We know that if carbon emissions stopped today, we still would have flooding problems in downtown. That study, that report, that plan tells us what our threats are, tells us where we will experience flooding, and lays out a response. The first thing to say about that plan, though, is that it's not complete. It doesn't tell us how to finance those responses. It doesn't tell us the governance structure that's going to tell us how to move forward, when to move forward. And we also know that we need to respond to science as it changes, as we get better information. Frankly, the observed flooding or sea level rise has outstripped predictions for quite some time. So the question is, should we be allowing development in downtown? And what I would say to you is, for the foreseeable future, I think that's the right plan. But we certainly need to keep our eye on this one. We do have responses to control flooding, and as time moves forward, those will become more and more of an investment, on a public and private investment, in order to protect our space downtown.
Each candidate now gets 1 minute each to respond.
When I read the executive summary of the port and city and lot study, I was struck by the wide swath of possibilities. I think the possible sea level rise over the next 100 years could be somewhere between 32 and 78 inches, I believe. So it seemed to me like there's an incredible possibility of where we could be headed, and yet the plan seems to be looking at the fact that this isn't going to come and hit us all at once, the fact that this is something we need to plan for and take in small incremental stages so that it's something that is that we can eat in small chunks, that we can plan for, and that we can fund in small chunks. I will say that everything about developing downtown has to be our focus, smart and safe, But this is where we come for the most dollars per square foot in terms of tax revenue. This is where we come to save money on infrastructure and on carbon footprint because we don't continue urban sprawl. So I would definitely support that. Thank you.
So I'm definitely, as I mentioned in my opening statement, in support of development downtown. I think we need more space for people to live. I think that we need to do it responsibly. We need to find compatible solutions with the city. That being said, in response to the sea level rise, I encourage everyone here to read that plan at some point so that you're also informed if you haven't done that already. By 2100, we expect sea level rise to be at least 36 inches and as much as 72 or more. That is obviously concerning, but we have 80 years to deal with that problem. So I think the biggest thing for the city to focus on are the 3 inflow points, the one just south of Fifth Avenue, the one down by Bud Bay, and the one around the current park where Capitol Lake sits right now. By being prepared, we can make sure that any infrastructure and buildings that we do put in are protected. Always preparedness is the biggest factor in looking at this. We can't stop the sea level from rising, but we can make sure we do everything to be prepared for when it does.
So Olympia is projected to grow by 40% over the next 20 years. That roughly equates to 1,000 new residents a year for the next 20 years. We're probably due to surpass that at this point. Our comprehensive plan that we adopted in 2014 dictated that we decided to accommodate 25% of that growth in our downtown. As that plan was moving forward, we also adopted a downtown strategy, which is an award-winning urban planning document that shows how we can do that while we grow with grace and as we plan for sea level rise. Along came the sea level rise adaptation plan that was adopted and vetted by this community. The most compelling argument for me to not retreat from downtown is that to move the lot infrastructure would be upwards of $1 billion. All the infrastructure and the east and east-west corridors through town to be replaced would be upwards of $1.5 billion. So versus the $300 million projected to accommodate and mitigate for sea level rise, it seems like a no-brainer to me that we armor our downtown. Thank you.
Okay, now is the time for you to pass your question to Phyllis and Annie. So if you have a question you would like to send, please direct them this way. So the people in the middle, please pass them across. Okay, thank you. All right, so they'll be busily at work translating all of that. The second question, we'll start with David. What are your views on the, quote, missing middle rezoning controversy? In addition, as more residents continue to move into the downtown area and there is greater population density, some zoning issues may need review. For example, the noise ordinance. How do you think the city should handle these and related zoning issues?
Thank you. From the general to the specific, I very much support infill housing, or what the missing middle was kind of built around. And that is, we need, just like the mayor said, we need spaces for people. We also have a generational change happening where there's some very interesting data coming out on millennials and Generation Y and Z are not looking to be homeowners in the same way, and we might actually way down the road have single-family cul-de-sac houses in a surplus, but that's no time soon. So the idea of infill housing, of adjusting zoning and having additional dwelling units being easier to build and easier to get approval for, I wholeheartedly support with one caveat, and that is, in some places where this has been a great idea on paper in general, as I said, in the specific, parking is a nightmare. And it makes parking absolutely 10 times worse. Now, the rebut to that is that's because we want to encourage public transportation. Well, our public transportation is kind of seen as a joke by most Olympians. We have some problems with weather, we have some problems with our bus station, and we have some problems with America's love affair with the automobile. But I think that if we were to take our missing middle process that I've heard from citizens, gosh, it seems like it was a good idea when it came to fruition, or when it, in theory, then when it came to fruition, it was kind of stuffed down our throats. I have some dear friends who kind of feel that way. And so I think exactly what the question said was some adjustments to zoning that might factor in modifications to building heights, to side yards, to noise, to parking, and then I would absolutely support anything that we can do to encourage smart and sustainable infill housing.
So personally, I have some issues with the whole missing middle topic when it was originally introduced. It was put forward, and the term market rate was used a lot. And the term market rate was passed off to the public to mean that market rate housing was more affordable. And that is in no way, shape, or form the case. And so I think we need to clear that misconception up first, that the missing middle supposedly is going to generate a lot more affordable housing for the city. That simply isn't true. Second of all, I am completely in support of looking at the zoning that currently exists and changing it in a compatible and smart fashion. I'm a science and fact-based person. I think this goes back to inclusive governance as well. We need to be listening to our citizens and the neighborhoods that are going to be affected by these zoning changes and make sure that they're heard and those concerns are actually taken into account. 3 minutes at a city council meeting to give your thoughts, to me, isn't all entirely enough, and sometimes I feel as though that falls on deaf ears. I think we need to do better at listening to the community. We need to make sure the changes we make sense and aren't going to displace people, and make sure that we give people the housing that they need.
Well, this is a current topic, obviously, and one that is unfolding right now with a ruling from the Growth Management Hearings Board that came out last night. So there will be some revisiting on the City Council of the missing middle ordinances in our future. We're in the middle of a housing crisis. We have a vacancy rate of less than 2% in Thurston County. We are underbuilding by 600 units a year in this city, or in the county. The missing middle ordinances came in with the best intentions to do sensitive infill within existing neighborhoods along transit corridors to support transit. And I'm sorry, but I think we have an amazing IT system. In fact, this community supported a ballot measure to increase our frequency and different, the different routes are going to be increasing as well. So there will be transit, and that most of that is supposed to be through our downtown and historic corridors and our neighborhood corridors. So the missing middle, no one's going to feel like they ever got enough outreach, and we'll talk more about that in another answer.
Well, I think the first thing to say about missing middle was that it was unanimously supported by every city council member and went through about a 2-year process. But I need to tell you, I'm quite disappointed in the way that the missing middle was rolled out to the community. We actually divided the community, and we confused most people as to what the proposal was. As I'm out doorbelling, people are asking me, what is this missing middle thing? They really don't understand what it is. They don't know whether they should trust the city in the process or not, and they're asking for help. And as Cheryl mentioned, we faced a legal challenge over this whole thing. It all should have been avoided. We should have done a much better job of connecting with the community and making sure that they knew what we wanted. And the irony of it is, the missing middle is projected to only deliver about 50 housing units per year, when, as we've acknowledged, we need 600 or 650 units per year. So I'm very supportive of the missing middle. I'm very disappointed in the way that it rolled forward. We need infill housing.
Thank you. This question goes to Brendan. It is commonly acknowledged that homelessness and its attendant problems constitute a major problem in the city, discouraging many residents from spending time downtown and taking advantage of the opportunities there. How do you plan to address the intersection of those issues, the intersection of the lack of affordable housing and the public services in Olympia, coupled with then the number of low-income wage earners or the working poor? How do you approach that intersection?
Yeah, I think this is the question a lot of people have been waiting to hear tonight, right? Looking at it from a big picture point of view, obviously homelessness is pretty complex. Everyone has their own reason for being homeless or their own challenges that they face, whether that's drug addiction, mental health, disability, or just simply hard times. Stepping back and looking at it from a big picture point of view, we can see that the solutions that have been put forth by the City Council thus far simply are not working. From 2017 to 2018, our unsheltered homeless increased 158%. If that isn't quantitative proof that the plans that have been put forth aren't working, then I don't know what is. Secondarily, I am completely, and I will say this openly, against any more mitigation sites and leaving the mitigation site that is downtown where it's at. That needs to be moved. I have friends and acquaintances that are business owners downtown, and when I speak to them regularly, the challenge is to get their regular customers to come back downtown and visit their business. On average, they're down 27% this year in revenue. That doesn't only affect the business owner. People want to have a lack of compassion for that idea. That affects also the sales tax revenue for the city, which means crucial processes and things that depend on that money are now at risk. So if we don't step back and take a graduated housing approach, which is my plan, a lot of people have said, well, what's your plan? So we're going to start by putting emergency shelter space in on city-owned land, and it's going to be city managed. We're not going to be contracting it out to other organizations that are charging us too much to have the same things done that we could do for cheaper. We need to get hands-on with these problems and handle them ourselves. After that shelter space is available, we need to look into subsidizing the mental health and addiction recoveries. I would much rather be spending our money on getting people clean and healthy than giving them a tent, right, in a mitigation site. To me, that is complete fiscal irresponsibility, and those types of solutions need to stop.
This is rough to do this in a minute. So this is obviously the number one topic that we hear in council chambers and at the doors when we're going around our neighborhoods. I believe that the city is on the right path, and this city has supported 2 ballot measures that are helping us. We passed the public safety ballot measure in November of 2017 and the home fund in the February of 2018. Those 2 work together to create this continuum of care right out from the street level up to housing. In fact, just coming in here tonight, our crisis response unit is driving around, and that's our crisis outreach for people that are in a mental health state of crisis. And they can be deployed immediately, go out into the stores, go out to the sidewalk, wherever they're called, and they intervene, they de-escalate. It's not necessary to have a police respond to this. You need a social worker that's trained in this type of technique. So that's just one of the things, and I could go on and on. I've been speaking around the state on what we are doing. We just don't have the money to take it to scale, but the mitigation site is working as a stabilization place, and the tiny home villages are also working.
So I appreciate the question that talks about the intersection between homelessness and the conditions in downtown, but I want to start by talking about homelessness itself. Thurston County Public Schools reported last year 1,700 homeless kids, 1,700. It's just mind-boggling to me that we have kids growing up in cars and in tent under tarps in the woods. We have about 300 homeless people in downtown Olympia. There's clearly an intersection there, but there is a much larger problem than what's playing out in downtown that needs to be addressed. I have 30 seconds left. Let me give you my response to homelessness. We needed coordinated eviction prevention. It's the most cost-effective response, is to keep people in their homes. We need more stabilization sites that offer basic services. We need the prompt closure of unsanctioned camps. We need more drug and mental health services. We need policies that set aside a portion of new housing for low-income and moderate income people. We need targeted expansion of property tax exemptions for low-income housing, a sustained, coordinated, and effective regional response with both governmental and community organizations.
Would you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. It's commonly known that homelessness and its attendant problems constitute a major problem in the city, discouraging many residents from coming downtown and taking advantages of those opportunities. How do you address those issues that are related to homelessness?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that homelessness is not really what affects downtown so much. It's the street culture, and there's a huge difference. I spent 5 years dealing with the difference of those 2 things. The street culture is what keeps people from going to the place that a community should center around. Nobody should be saying, the most valuable part of a community, oh, I don't ever go there. I used to put on a music festival down at the Capitol Theater for 18 years. When we first started doing it, people said, I don't go downtown. It's not safe. It's not comfortable. And we would make fun of them. And they were doing, you've got to stick, you know where. You need to have fun and come downtown. It's safe. It's fun. It's welcoming. And instead, 18 years later, this year was the first year that we canceled the Elvis birthday bash at the Capitol Theater. Why? Because too many people who had come for 18 years said, we're not going to go do that anymore. It's the street culture, the encrusted, galvanized street culture that we've allowed to persist that keeps people from coming and enjoying downtown. Most homeless people we don't ever see. They accept services, they stay with friends and family, they get into shelter, and their homelessness is safe, brief, and singular.
Yeah, you're for. No, that's what we just did.
We got so lost in the answers that we forgot where we were. Or I did. Okay, this is a little complicated. Not that the others were uncomplicated. As Olympia continues to infill with continuing growth, there undoubtedly will be proposals to develop commercial and residential properties that have a variety of serious physical problems associated with them. For example, a property could be a former toxic or solid waste disposal site. It could be a location subject to liquefaction in the event of a major earthquake. It could be on a bluff or steep hillside, could be adjacent to a water body or wetland, be above a high water table, or have other physical challenges. What do you believe should be the city's approach to land use regulations for properties with such challenging characteristics?
Well, I would refer anybody that has questions like that to our comprehensive plan, which deals with every factor that you just mentioned, and we just updated ours in 2014. There's all kinds of zoning and code enforcement around critical areas, building too close to wetlands. There's all types of protections from the SEPA and NEPA around brownfields redevelopment. In fact, the city just got a $600,000 EPA grant to do brownfield cleanup, which is pretty exciting. Liquefaction, we understand that everything north of about 4th Avenue is fill, part of the Carline fill from about 80 years ago. And so when people do build downtown, they have to have severe earthquake measures incorporated into their engineering plans. And so that's why when you hear or you see a building going in downtown, you hear that pounding for about a month while they're pile driving and sheet piling so that they can accommodate for any kind of liquefaction. So we do consider those things. I mean, that's what a responsible city does. So thanks.
Well, I would agree that there are protections for all of those things that were listed in the question, whether it's toxic cleanup or whether it's seismic. And we can debate whether the standards that have been established are correct, but the truth is that there are federal, state, and local regulations that control development, and all of those issues are addressed in our current process. I also think that our comprehensive plan, thank you, Mayor Selby, our comprehensive plan does provide us with direction as to where development should go and what type of development should go where. You heard me say earlier, I think that we need more housing. I'm very anxious to move forward in order to incentivize additional housing within Olympia. And the reason for that, and you've heard some of this, is our vacancy rate is about 2.5%. The cost of our housing is going up. It went up 50% in the last 5 years. And during that same 5-year period, wages went up about 3.5%. The cost of housing is skyrocketing. We need to build. All of these issues will be addressed in that process.
In response to the question, I think if you maybe ask somebody from the building trade, which I have a little background in, if my dad was a local builder, if your house was built between about 1980 and 2000, probably a 1 in 3 chance that we built your roof trusses. But I'm not speaking as a builder, and I'm not a builder. I chose to go into psychiatric social work. What I would say is that they might say that we need to lower fees, we need to lower regulations, we need to not worry about this stuff quite so much if you want to get affordable housing. I would say we need to make our housing, I mean, the old basic stuff, build up, not out. We need to do everything we can. We don't think of it because this is such a beautiful area, but we need to stop suburban sprawl and urban flight. We don't call it urban flight because nobody historically really has wanted to live in downtown Olympia for about 40 years. I think we can avoid a lot of these issues by continuing not so much infill housing as much as urban housing, and something that's almost unheard of in Olympia, and something that we really need to support.
So I want to agree first and foremost that the current regulations in the city has, I've read them, and they are pretty extensive, when we're talking about wetlands protection and the environmental factors that come into play when development expands. The one overwhelming issue that a lot of people probably have on their mind is the big quake that is coming, right? I would really urge the city to hire a team of scientists, because none of us are scientists. And we need to hire the people that know what is coming and what can happen, not only on the earthquake front, but with some of the environmental concerns that we're talking about with wetlands and zoning requirements. If we take a step back and we just look at the city as a whole, I think we've done a pretty good job. I know when my parents built their home, they had protected wetlands on their property, and it took them an extra 4 months probably to build their house because of that fact. So I can tell you the city does enforce those things, and they take them very seriously, at the very least.
Our next question is going to be for everybody, so you each get 2 minutes.
Fantastic.
There are many issues and proposed solutions regarding Capitol Lake. How would you describe these issues, and what would be your approach to solving them? And we'll just go right on down the line.
Well, the Capitol Lake decision is in process. We're in an environmental impact statement process that's being managed by the state. They're about a year and a half into a 4-year process. The process is funded, it's moving forward, and I hope it's the last study on Capitol Lake. I won't guarantee that, but I think that we are getting close. I have been involved in the Capitol Lake issue for about 20 years now. In my role as a state employee, I was very close to the Capitol Lake discussion. My own opinion is that the science is clear as to where we need to move. To me, the real question is, when we remove the dam and when we manage that sediment and when we deal with the toxic materials that are in Bud Inlet, how do we do that? How do we protect our important investments? How do we as a community pull together in order to make sure that we get the product that we're looking for and that it isn't shortchanged? And I think that there's a large community-wide discussion that needs to happen as to what needs to go forward. So as far as the environmental impact statement is concerned, again, it has more process to go. I think I can predict the answer because I've seen the science. I think I know where they will direct us. I think the issue is not what, but how, and how to do that responsibly, and how to do that with economic sensitivity and cultural and social sensitivity. Thanks.
I get 2 minutes to pontificate about this, right? When this issue, I swam in Capitol Lake. Believe it. Some of you probably have. When this issue first came up, it was sort of the star-bellied sneeches and the plain-bellied sneeches, right? If you were woke and alert and enlightened, environmentally aware, clearly it had to be an estuary. If you were an old-timer, a lifelong resident, somebody who wants to honor tradition, we need to go back to having little mini hydroplane races and be able to swim and learn how to swim on Capitol Lake, or, God forbid, water ski. I think, what was it? Well, you probably know, Nathan, the clamp was just about ready to solve this. And that's been the case for as long as I can remember now. when I heard that there was actually real science and some long-term folks that have been involved in this process backing some of the hybrid models, like the deli model, saying, you know what, we can have our cake and eat it too. I didn't believe it. Now, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a dad, I'm a Cub Scout volunteer. I'm a psychiatric social worker in the past, substance abuse crisis intervention counselor. I'm not an environmental scientist, not a hydrologist, but hearing from some of the folks that have been involved in this issue from the very start, that we could have our cake and eat it too, that we could have an estuary, that we could have a place that is livable, swimmable. To me, that's something that if there's any possible way that we could have our reflecting pool and the original vision of the Capitol campus and a place that people can actually recreate in Capitol Lake, I would wholeheartedly support that. And that's something that I know it's not Olympia's decision, but we certainly have a vested interest in what we do. And I think if you haven't lived here, it's not because Capitol Lake got infilled completely, but if you haven't lived here when downtown smelled like a sewage plant, I don't think that you can just say that you know the science and you can predict what's going to happen by just turning it into an estuary without considering other options.
Thank you.
So to speak further on the deli plan that my good friend here just mentioned, that stands for Dual Estuary Lake Idea, and that was something that came up in 2016. I am very much in support of that idea. It offers multiple benefits. First of all, it would relocate the lake and build raised walls where most people consider the lake to be right now, right in that space where Lake Fair is normally held. By raising those walls, it would also account for sea level rise, so it's kind of a double whammy on that aspect. Secondarily, it would help restore the rest of that waterway to estuary. The other positive part about having the lake where it would be is that it would be filled by artesian inflows. So we would have, in the case of a natural disaster or other emergency, potable water that is ready for the citizens, that is completely clean and fresh. For me, there's 3 different reasons right there why combining these 2 ideas works. And it just makes sense. I would encourage anyone that hasn't read that plan or heard of it to read it, because the person that wrote it is very smart, much smarter than I am as far as science and the ecological concerns go. But it branches the divide between the people, because people that want it to be an estuary hate everyone that wants it to be a lake, and everyone that wants it to be a lake so they can go and use their canoe or their paddleboard on it again don't want it to be an estuary. I think we need to find the best of both worlds here.
So I've been serving on the executive work group of the Phase 1 and now the Phase 2 environmental impact statement for over 2 years now. So I've been at the table while we've been discussing all of these factors that go into making this decision. It is a difficult one. It's very divisive in this community, as you know. We're hoping that with this Phase 2 EIS that we are looking at all 3 options for the lake, a managed lake, a hybrid, and then a restored estuary, that all 3 of those will be vetted scientifically at the same level as each other. They'll be taking some of the emotions out of it, because we have to make a decision based on science. And as we know, Mother Nature bats last. And right now, Mother's not really happy with the dammed lake. And there's, I'm going to quote some statistic here. Statistics. Each year the Deschutes loads 35,000 cubic yards of sediment into Capitol Lake, and since the 50s, this lake has lost 60% of its water volume, an average of almost 1% per year. And the water that does remain is fouled with invasive species, toxic algae, and a cornucopia of bacteria. Nice, right? So, and just dredging it and keeping it a lake, there's a lot of sentiment around the lake, and folks that, lifeguarded there, I know them, swam there. But you hear the backstory on how they kept it healthy, and it's not natural. I mean, they would have to pour in all kinds of chemicals right before the testing happened so the kids could actually swim in the lake. It was never healthy. So if we can find a hybrid that still passes the science test and that the tribes can support, because that's the other big factor that no one's talking about, is that that's their native land, and they have, if you think Mother Nature bats last, well, the tribes are on deck, and they are not happy either. So we have to consider all those factors. Thank you.
Thank you. So before we get to the audience questions, we're going to invite the candidates to have their 2 minutes each of closing statements.
Sorry.
Okay, Brennan, you can go. So that all the candidates are getting their 2 minutes for closing statements before we transition into the audience questions.
Good time for me to be off book, I guess. So, first of all, I want to thank everyone, even though I'm sure we're going to have some more questions to answer, and hopefully I'll get to speak with some of you after this. I was born and raised here. I've lived here my entire life, and I sleep, eat, and breathe this city. I went to Olympia High School, and I graduated with honors. I got the Chancellor's Scholarship at St. Martin's. I turned down acceptance letters from schools from UCLA, UW, WSU, you name it. I applied to every school, and I went to St. Martin's so that I could continue living in Olympia. I sacrificed a lot of opportunity to stay here, and now I want to raise my family here. I think that if more young people got involved, and granted there's not very many of them here tonight, no offense, I think if more young people got involved in politics, right, and had their voices heard, that we could have a much more inclusive community when it comes to our city government. It's very important that we take the issues that we're facing seriously. The homelessness problem is not something that, if unhandled, will simply stay downtown or stay where it is. Just like I said, it's affecting our sales tax revenues in some ways right now. If that overflows into communities, eventually property values will be affected. And after that, that means the property tax revenue for the city gets affected, and then our public works suffers. We need to look at this as a serious issue and really evaluate, as Cheryl has said multiple times, on a scientific and fact-based level, what is going to work and what is not working. On the affordable housing front, we need to find ways to incentivize and stimulate development so that there's enough places for people to live. And third of all, on the public safety front, we need to increase walking patrols downtown, and we need to ensure that we find a way that we can keep needles and vagrancy away from our children and away from our families where people want to frequent. I love this city more than anything, and I thank all of you for taking time on your Friday night, which is a beautiful night. It'd be a great night for a barbecue, but instead you're here. So it shows that you all care, and I appreciate that. So thank you for coming, and thank you for giving us a chance to talk to you.
I'm happy to go now. I was confused. I thought closing would be the end. We're adaptable, right? As your mayor, I'm practical, open-minded, optimistic, and collaborative. I bring strong leadership skills, a solid sense of community, integrity, and a record of achievement to my role as mayor. As political dysfunction spreads across our nation from D.C., these qualities are more important than ever in local government, and that's why I'm running for re-election in 2019 as Olympia's mayor. In the quarter century I've lived in Olympia, I've raised a family, worked as a city employee, owned a downtown business, supported high-achieving schools, and volunteered for nonprofit organizations. I've consistently supported a well-trained police force and firefighters, excellent public services, and economic vitality for all. Communities can often get discouraged by difficult challenges, but we must not lose sight of what makes Olympia great. Strong neighborhoods, thriving businesses, a vibrant arts scene, and residents who work together with passion. After serving almost 6 years on council, I'm still encouraged by opportunities to bring us together and find solutions to make Olympia healthier, more inclusive, and environmentally resilient. I'd be honored to receive your vote for mayor in the August 6th primary and the November 5th general elections. And to see more information on my platform endorsements, check out my website, electcherylselby.com. But more importantly, would you check out the city website? One of the hardest things we have as elected officials is getting the word out on what's really happening in the city. Not a lot of people are getting the Olympian as they used to, and so the way that we reach out is to have people reach out to our website. You can sign up for an e-newsletter on homelessness that comes out almost weekly. That's where you're going to find the truth about our homeless response and what's really, really going on and how you can get involved, but also how you can respond back to us. So there's also an Engage Olympia program on right now where you can give us input on the budget for 2020. So that's all on our website. So please, please engage with us. Thank you.
So our city needs effective partnerships to address homelessness, housing costs, and climate pollution. Olympia needs to be a safe and inviting place where people who work in Olympia can afford to live in Olympia. These are not new issues for our community. These are issues that have not been adequately addressed. Olympians are smart and involved. We know the challenges that face us, and most of us, including the people in this room, want to be a part of the answer. We deserve effective, collaborative leadership to address our shared concerns. Now, I'm proud to have worked with PSE, state agencies, and other communities across the state. to get us off of coal-fired energy and bring us 100% renewable energy. I'm the environmental candidate who will lead the way to new jobs and clean water and clean energy. The foundational skill of any elected official is to listen and to understand. Representative government requires understanding of a community's values, concerns, aspirations, and only then can a leader identify common ground and feasible responses. Leadership is not the ability to push through an agenda. Rather, it's the ability to bridge divides and identify viable outcomes that benefit the community that you serve. I'm confident that we can address our challenges. We need to stop reacting, and we need to start leading. This is our time for bold action and for a new direction. I will bridge divides, I will build partnerships, I will reach across the region and throughout the community. This is the time to create the community that we want, the community for today and for tomorrow. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
I would summarize my candidacy based upon reviving downtown Olympia, and that might sound a little bit odd at first, but reviving downtown Olympia really touches on a whole lot of issues that we've talked about so far. Reviving downtown Olympia means that people live, work, and play in downtown Olympia. It means that we create affordable housing in downtown Olympia. It means that we help to preserve our green spaces and farmland and wildlife out in the further reaches of the city. It means that we live a less carbon-intensive lifestyle and have a smaller carbon footprint if more and more people live in a smaller area. It means that we'll have less automobile trips and less traffic and more focus on public health, pedestrian-friendly and bike-friendly lifestyles. It means that you would be more likely to support local entrepreneurs rather than supporting suburban sprawl out to chains and strip malls and places that take responsibility and revenue out of our community. It means it reduces the tax burden on all of you because the maintenance of our infrastructure stops growing and growing and growing, and as it ages, that gets worse and worse and worse. Healthy downtowns are the intersection of a lot of different cultures. We've sort of seeded that, and it's time to bring that back for a whole host of reasons. I'll finish by simply citing Olympia's heritage as a brewing city, as an artesian well city, and we built a little park. Not for our community. We left an asphalt park around that well. It was open for 1,400 days, and it had 1,400 police calls to that park. It now sits closed. There were 71 bodily harm charges, crimes committed in those 1,400 days. There were 51 people permanently trespassed from that park. My little boy asked me when I told him about it, how come they didn't build a playground there, Daddy? He's 9 years old. And I said, I don't know. They would never, we just couldn't, and I couldn't give him a good answer. And I'll know we've done our job when that park is reopened and maybe there is a playground there and there are families and kids working and playing and living and having fun in downtown Olympia. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So we got a number of really good questions from the audience. There was some dovetailing and overlapping, but we've picked out two questions that are on totally different issues, and then one that follows up on something we talked about, plus we have a bonus question. So why don't we do 1 minute for this next question?
For all candidates.
Yes, for all candidates. The questioner says, I notice that tonight's attendees are, quote, senior. What, if anything, will you do to encourage younger people to engage in Olympia's programs? All right, we'll start with Cheryl.
Don't have a forum on a Friday night at 7 p.m. in the middle of summer. Just saying. So I have two daughters, 28 and 30. And one of the reasons I ran initially was because I wanted to create a city that they could see themselves coming back to, because we have so much talent leakage. Thank you for staying. It's really, really hard to see these kids that you've nurtured and you've given all your time and efforts into, and you have all these resources and amenities for these kids and these strong schools, and then they go to college and they never come back. So that was literally one of the reasons, is that I wanted to have my kids close to me, and I had one back for a year, and now she's up in Seattle. But I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful.
By the way, this was the only night we could get this room.
I'm not blaming you.
She called me.
Yeah, see, you have pulled with that, right?
Well, I'd say the way to engage young people is to address those issues that they're concerned about. As I talk to younger folks, they feel as though we're missing the boat on climate change. We're missing the boat on school loans. They want socialized health care, frankly. They see a consolidation of wealth that concerns them. They don't see anyone addressing these issues. These are not local issues necessarily, but as a community, these are issues that we can coalesce around and that we can bring people into the fold, and we can have a political discussion that will engage young people. And I recommend it.
I have several young people that work for me, and it's always interesting because I've heard this for my whole life. I still feel young. I consider myself young, but I'm not. And I don't know how to Snapchat. I don't know how to Instagram. I'm pretty good at Facebook. But hearing from them what they aspire to and what their concerns are, I think I would echo what Cheryl said, that a lot of them, their education, they see the value, but we're in the middle of a big change in relation to what Nathan said, that the cost of education, it may not even be worth it. And there are sort of some competing industries that say you don't even need a higher education in order to succeed, and it's not worth all the debt you incur. And we have minimum wage that is clearly not able to even pay for housing in our community. So it's a really tough time, and it's really interesting hearing, I wouldn't say a nihilistic view of life, but getting folks engaged in a way that is hopeful and encouraging and teaching them new skills. I'd like to also commend the city on starting an outreach program specifically for youth that are at risk and helping engage them in the community. I think that was a great position on their part.
Can you repeat the question one more time, just so I'm sure that I'm answering? Because it feels like I've got a variety up here, and now I'm questioning if I heard it right or not.
I noticed that most of tonight's attendees are, quote, senior. What, if anything, will you do to encourage younger people to engage in Olympia's programs?
Yeah. So I can say honestly, up until the last couple of years when I was interested in politics and running for this office, that I was pretty uninvolved in a lot of the programs in the city. I kind of worked behind my computer, and that was that. And it's kind of funny to me also that this isn't only really isolated with young crowds. I know that, my parents, still young at heart, they're here tonight. Some people of their age don't even know, for example, who is on the city council or what programs are available or how the tax exemptions in the city work. And I also want to commend Cheryl and the city council on building the outreach program that they started and starting to take advantage of social media more. I think that is a very underutilized thing. And I know, like David said, a lot of people don't use Snapchat or Facebook and things like that. But the fact of the matter is, every generation after the one right now is going to. And so we need to start investing in technological processes. And as a consultant that specializes in technology, I would hope that I had the background to build some of those systems out so that we can reach the people that really need to hear what Olympia has to offer.
Thank you. Again, these are for all of the candidates. You get 1 minute. What is your position on sanctuary cities? And why don't we start with the middle? And we'll start with David.
My knee-jerk response to the sanctuary city issue is that it's not our business. That's a national issue, and that's something that we as a nation need to come to terms with, something that's ripping our country apart. At the local level, I didn't know how much until I got, actually before this race, I didn't know how much it affected us until I did the Olympia Police Citizens Academy recently, and how that affected some of our choices of where we would, when we have, and we almost always do, have overflow choices for jail space, and where we lease jail space, and where we send prisoners that are in custody. One of the problems that I see with us choosing or not choosing to be a sanctuary city is that it rips open some of those same wounds of the star-bellied sneetches and the non-star-bellied sneetches. And I'm sorry to go back to that analogy, but I have a little boy. And there are so many things that come before our city that may or may not affect us on a daily basis, but they affect us in terms of ripping us into two different camps. And I'd like to see us do as little of that as a city as possible.
So I'll just start out by saying that I don't look down upon the fact that we are a sanctuary city. I think America was built on immigration, and that's fantastic that the city has taken that stance, and I commend the city council on doing so. For me, however, there are two types of immigrants that I welcome to our city: those that come legally and that are looking for somewhere to stay, and even those that come illegally that are escaping prosecution, bodily harm, war, sexual exploitation, and things like that. The people that I don't welcome to stay here are the ones that come illegally and then commit a crime. I believe wholeheartedly in the law, in the word of the law. If you come here illegally and you commit a crime, I fully believe that we should not be giving you sanctuary here anymore. I think that it is awesome that we do so, but we need to be careful where we draw that line between helpful and harmful. And if we're careful, those lines get blurred and it doesn't help anybody at that point.
So on December 13th, 2016, the city of Olympia declared itself a sanctuary city by proclamation, by resolution, but nothing has changed in our resolve to be just that since that time. Our city will serve all residents, regardless of their immigration status. Stop. That's what we do. We did it before we were a sanctuary city, and we just made it a declaration when we had that new person that got elected in 2016. I don't know what to call that person. So I'm proud that our city did this, but it really just codified what we were already doing. We do not participate in ICE seizures or any kind of ICE activities. We can't stop them, but we do not assist them, and we do not tell anybody in our city. We don't ask anybody what their immigration status is, if they want garbage service or if they want electricity or any of our city services. Nothing is declared, off limits.
So the role of the city is to deliver services and to regulate for our residents, regardless of their immigration status or documentation. We're here to serve our residents. I'm glad that we're a sanctuary city. What we did was we said we're not going to supplement the budgets or the staffing of federal agencies. That's what we were being asked to do. And we said, no, thank you. That's someone else's budget. That's someone else's problem. We hope to have a connection with all of our residents. And policies that drive people underground and scare them into hiding are not in the best interests of our community. We took that action some time ago, and now as we see what's happening on our border, or even what's happening at the Tacoma Detention Center, I'm glad that we've taken a stand on this issue. And I believe that our community is united around this. So thank you.
Okay, this is a combination of two questions, which is an outgrowth, as you'll see from some earlier answers. I think I'm reading this correctly. Today, it says here, today the Growth Management Hearing Board invalidated Olympia Ordinance, whatever it is, 7160, I think, the Missing Middle Initiative, because it violated RCW 43.21.030. One, is that the case? And second, what is your response?
Where do you want to start?
Well, Cheryl raised her hand.
Yeah, I spoke to this earlier. This is literally an unfolding issue. Our legal staff in-house has not had a chance to even read through it thoroughly. My brief understanding is that there's only 2 parts of it that were denied by the Growth Management Board. So the rest of it is fine. There's just 2 issues that they had. One of them was around a certain density for a certain designation, like 4 to 8 houses. Some of the different housing that we approved for 4 to 8, for an example, don't quote me, was too high and it didn't comply with the comprehensive plan. And the other one was around parking requirements. So stay tuned. This is an unfolding situation, but it wasn't part and parcel just denied. It was just certain parts of it were plucked out.
So I've not read the findings. I understand they came out last night. Certainly haven't been briefed by legal staff on their interpretation. But I'll go back to my earlier statement about missing middle. I feel like we missed the boat when we rolled it out. I don't think people fully understood what we were trying to accomplish. And I think that we stirred up unnecessary opposition.
I think you heard me earlier say that I supported infill housing. I had some problems with the way the implementation took place with the missing middle and some concerns about parking. I take the balance of my time to reiterate that I might have a certain view of any topic, and I don't see it as the role of a city council person to impose their worldview on the citizens. And that's one of the problems that got me into this race, is seeing some of the council members at city council meetings really holding a religiosity about their politics, their worldview, and imposing that upon the citizenry. And I just don't think that's the role of people who are supposed to be counting beans or setting 30,000-foot policy about your tax money or about how to solve social issues. We have some sheriffs in our state right now who are deciding not to enforce the law with a new gun control measure. If we go down this path, I don't think that that's a place that we want to venture and continue down a slippery slope.
Well, this topic was mentioned to someone that's very close to me, and now I feel stupid for not asking more questions about exactly what it was. That's a great question. I'll do what the other candidates have said and say that, I think we need to take time to look at the findings and reevaluate the plan, and echo also what Nathaniel had to say about the execution of the missing middle plan. I think that anything that goes back, we need to ensure that when that goes onto paper and that becomes code, that we are taking not only the findings into account, but the community's input since it's been put in. I would look at this as a chance to revise anything else in there that is perhaps incorrect or incompatible with what the city has found it to be.
All right. Thank you. This is the bonus round.
Bonus.
And again, open to each candidate to respond to. How would you address the threats to data systems by cyber criminals which have attacked and stolen data of municipalities, businesses, and healthcare institutions? How would you prevent cyber theft, and how would you combat attacks to Olympia's data systems? And we'll start with...
Start?
Yeah.
This is right up my alley. Great. So recently, one of my close associates, one of my ex-clients, had his data hijacked by some Russian hijackers, and he ended up having to pay $50,000 to get it back. This is because of a simple fact, that his data wasn't backed up anywhere. Had his data been backed up somewhere and he had secure backups, either on-site or off-site, this wouldn't have been a problem. I know a lot of people hear the term the cloud, and even my girlfriend sometimes asks me, what does that even mean? What is the cloud? Well, the cloud is just a sweeping term for somewhere that you store data off-site remotely that is accessible from anywhere. I think the city needs to look into these topics more in depth and be careful, because it has happened in municipalities. In California, multiple small cities have been hit. Arizona cities have been hit. Small counties in Las Vegas were also hit. So if we're not careful, the city will end up ultimately spending tax dollars on these data problems. So the best solution is multiple offsite data backups, multiple redundancy, and by doing that, we ensure that the data is safe, and if somebody hijacks it, you just wipe the computer and put it back on.
I do know we have a really robust internal IT department, and we get all kinds of warnings frequently about how to handle our emails and all the other, our internet searches and all that within the city system. I do know they do back up to the cloud. I don't know whether there's a redundancy within that cloud backup, but yeah, the ransomware is real. People can steal your data, and then you have to pay to get it back. It's frightening. So we do get warnings. I'm not that technical, but I'm trusting that they're on that, but I will follow up after this discussion.
Well, I think the question is not just about ransomware. I think it's also about how do you protect the security of data so that people aren't getting sensitive information about our citizens. I really just think this is a priority and a budget issue and how it fits into our expenditure. I think these issues can be addressed. I think we know how to do it. I think that we do have a robust IT system. We just need to continue to stay on top of this, stay reviewing the situation, and make sure that we have adequate budget in order to provide protections.
I would concur that this would be one of those topics where, I mean, you're here on a Friday night where you could be out enjoying the sunshine, so you're politically involved enough to do that, and I thank you. But a lot of people may not even know that if whoever wins this election, you're not instantly the emperor of the city. You're one member of a 7-member city council, what's commonly called in the vernacular a weak mayor strong council system. So you don't come in and run anything. You have to build bridges and do teamwork with 6 other people. I would make the case that the 14 years of experience on this table and of incumbents maybe haven't done the best job of tempering some of the more extreme viewpoints on the council or trying to collaborate in other ways. But I'm trying to get to my point that this is something that I would defer to the experts that work for the city. I don't expect to come in and run every department or micromanage in any way because I'm not an expert in a whole lot of things. There are a few things that I am an expert in and that I've been speaking very vocally about, but I would defer to the city's experts about handling our data.
Okay, first I want to say thank you to the members of the audience. You all have just been great, and I think you should give yourself a round of applause. After all, you're not out gallivanting around, and we appreciate that. A special thanks to our candidates. You're going to be able to as I like to say, buttonhole them shortly. We've built in time so that when we do our final thank you to them and send them out into your midst, you'll have a chance to ask them to elaborate further or to answer the question that didn't get picked or one that you just thought of. So that's just grand. I would ask you to do one other thing as you stand up and head for the candidates, is please take your chair with you. And there's stacks of chairs back in the back, and that would help a lot because otherwise all the rest of us will have to do it. So a special round of applause for the candidates and very much appreciated.